Hey everyone, working on my Harbor Freight two-stroke generator here, the TailGator or Stormcat, made under lots of different names. But I've been giving it a lot of TLC and sort of troubleshooting recently. I bought it for $40 on Craigslist, and it wasn't advertised as not working, but it wasn't coming up to speed, and the RPM adjustment needle, or screw rather, wasn't having any effect on the RPM. So I kind of took the whole thing apart and put it back together, and it turns out that the issue was a clogged exhaust. So once I got that cleared out, it's working pretty well now. But I'm running into a few issues with some of the things that I needed to re-gasket. So for example, I guess this would be called the insulator, where the carburetor sits here. This is where the butterfly valves are. This, as well as a few other places that had fiber gaskets that sort of fell apart when I took it apart. So I need to make some new gaskets. Actually, I used some of this gasket maker, and it worked well for a lot of different places, but I still had a little bit of an oil leak here. I think it was because of this seam. So I'm gonna make a replacement fiber gasket for it. I've got a sheet of gasket material here. You can get these at auto parts stores. And so I'm just gonna rough this out in the, not rough it out, do it pretty precisely actually in the, for the shape we need here. What I think I'm gonna do is use some painter's tape to make a sort of a sheet here of the size that we need, and then I can mark the holes and peel it off and transfer it to this over on the bench for a more precise fit. And then I'll cover both sides with the gasket material, or gasket maker rather, and we will have a fresh gasket. I think for the holes, for the bolt holes, I'm going to use, I've never used this before. I have an old punch and die hand tool here that should punch those holes pretty nicely. I have the proper size in here, so we'll get that going and we'll see what it comes out like. So here's a tip I'd like to show for sort of making a mock-up of the gasket here with painter's tape. If you run your finger along any seams, you get a nice sort of depression or seam on the painter's tape where any of these features are, so you can see the screw holes pretty precisely. And I followed the edges of the seams up here on the top and bottom. But you can then come in with a razor blade and just follow that contour, and it'll come out quite nicely. So I'm gonna finish that up, and then I'll paste this on the gasket material, and that'll show me where the screw holes are. So this is going quite well so far. I've got my mock-up on the gasket material, so now I know where the bolt holes are, and the interior hole, the gas inlet, so to speak. So I'll go punch out those screw holes and just use a razor blade to cut out the middle part. Very good fit here on the gasket. It's a little bit oversized on the top here, but I think I'll just leave it. And bolt holes all fit. This is just a mock-up, or a dry fit rather. So now I'll remove everything, just give the surfaces one last cleaning with some acetone or something, and then I'll apply the gasket maker to both sides of the, or both mating surfaces rather, and we'll get the gasket in. And I won't be able to show that. I don't have enough hands for it, but I'll show you the aftermath. I don't have torque specs on these bolts. I'm just going to give it maybe just a same thing I would do with a spark plug. Just sort of grab the top of the ratchet in your palm and tighten it as much as you can like that. That's usually about 25 foot-pounds. That might be a little bit much. I'll probably go just a bit less than that, but that should solve my oil leak problem at the bottom here. And we're in. New gasket installed. I ran into a problem here. I think not a major problem, but I think I flipped it after I took it off of the dry fit there. And as you can see, there's a lot more space on this side than this side. So I ended up with a big flap over here after I had applied the gasket material. So I just quickly grabbed a pair of scissors and trimmed off over here. But it still fits the bounds of this insulator here, or standoff, or whatever this is called. So that is that. And in this case, with the gasket maker, I'm not sure where the tube went, but a lot of times with gaskets, it'll say something like torque to a certain amount, wait an hour, torque it again. But with this gasket maker, it says just torque it to the final torque spec right out of the gate. So that's what I did. Of course, I don't know what it is. I just kind of eyeballed it, or did it by feel. So we'll see how that works. That should fix my oil leak. But the way I applied the gasket maker, I guess the last tip for this video is it didn't really have the tube. Here it is. The tube doesn't really have an applicator tip. It's just like a toothpaste tube type of end. So what I did is I squeezed it out onto some painter's tape and then used a skewer to sort of dab it on to where I wanted it to go. Normally I'd use waxed paper for this kind of thing, but I'm out, so I just used the painter's tape instead. So that works for me, and hopefully this will help you tackle a gasket replacement on your 2-stroke Harbor Freight generator. So that's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.